Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We'll call this regular City Council meeting on November 9th to order. And we'll begin with a poem from our poet laureate, Jenna Lynn Albert. Hang in there, Jenna Lynn.
I said no.
You know, she just had her tonsils out. Huh?
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, she's not?
Yeah,
not
she had her tonsils removed in the past week or so, and so I suspect we may not be hearing from her at all.
All right.
She's a
Could
rough
be
shape.
your roses are red.
Yeah.
Somebody should have read in Flanders Fields.
Dan can read his. I could find. I'll look for one and I'll.
You know,
read
I'm
it
serious.
later.
Someone could read in Flanders Fields, couldn't they? I'm not going to. But anyway.
Well, so Jenna Lynn, heal well, and we'll hear you in the near future. So, City Clerk, approval of agenda.
There are no additional items to add to the agenda this evening.
Okay, so be moved by Councillor Peter, second by Councillor Malay, that the agenda be adopted. All those in favor? Against? Motion is carried. Does anybody have a conflict of interest to declare on any of the items before us tonight?
I do, Your Worship. Councillor Price.
Which one, Councillor?
7.2, please.
Okay, we'll wait for you to sign off at that one before we proceed on it. Thank you. Just before I begin, first of all, I'd like to congratulate our neighbors to the south, the United States, on an election. I know it's not 100% official, perhaps, but a lot of companies in Fredericton, their biggest trading partner and client is in the U.S., so what happens there is extremely important to Canada, New Brunswick, and to Fredericton. So all the best and good luck as they proceed over the next 4 years with a new government. Also, Remembrance Day is this Wednesday. I had the honor of attending the ceremony at St. Mary's First Nation today on behalf of council. They did have one in person, socially distanced, but I know the other normal ceremonies are not proceeding as usual. I think there's some very small private ones with Legion members and perhaps some members of the armed forces. So I ask everybody, though, perhaps at 11 o'clock on Wednesday morning to pause for a few minutes to remember those that put their lives on the line, sacrifice their lives, and also continue to serve and protect Canada and our values worldwide. So I take the moment on that day to remember my father, who was in World War II, and thank goodness came back to Fredericton. And also on that note, I want to take just a second to remember to pay our condolences to Mr. John Bliss. And if anybody know John, he knows he wanted to be called E. John Bliss. Mr. Bliss was a city councillor from 1971 to 73. Mr. Bliss passed away last week, and he later served as the city engineer for 21 years, 1979 to 1998. His career was highlighted by the role he played in solving the problem of manganese in Fredericton's drinking water by construction of the largest manganese removal plant in North America, right here in Fredericton. Water quality improvements continued under his leadership with the introduction of modern construction and maintenance processes. The water treatment plant on Waterloo Row was named after John in John's honor in March 2008. Mr. Bliss, along with his wife, Dr. Dorothy McDade, was an active supporter of the United Way, the YMYWCA, the Fredericton Indoor Pool, the Fredericton Playhouse, UNB, and many, many other causes that I'm sure they chose to remain anonymously, or donated anonymously. So on behalf of City Council and staff, we express our gratitude for John's long service to his city and our condolences to Dorothy and to their extended families. Consent agenda. We have 4 items on the consent agenda. Does anybody wish to speak to any or withdraw any? Councillor Erickson.
Thank you, Worship. I'd like to withdraw 5.4.
5.4 for discussion or vote. So be it. So we'll, the other 3 items, items 5.1, 2, and 3, we'll proceed with those. So be moved by Councillor McDermott and second by the Deputy Mayor that we proceed with those 3 items on the consent agenda. On the question, all those in favor of the motion? Those against? Motion's carried. Item 5.4. So Councillor Erickson.
Thanks, Your Worship. I just wanted to take an opportunity to say that I'm going to be voting against this motion. I'm not entirely content with how it has rolled out. I would have much rather seen a review and presentation of the programs that are being referenced here instead of deleting all that content out of our procedural bylaw first. And for that reason, I'll be voting against this motion.
Okay. Is there a mover for that motion? Moved by Councillor Chase. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor McDermott. So any further questions? All those in favor of the motion? Those against? Councillor Chase, did you have a question? Oh, sorry. Those against be Councillor McDermott, Councillor Chase. Motion is carried. Oh, sorry. No, not McDermott, Erickson, sorry. Hey, it's that left eye of mine, you see. Thank you. So we'll move on to approval of the minutes of the regular city council meetings of September 15th and September 28th. That'd be moved by Councillor Dara, seconded by Councillor Peters. On the question? All those in favor of the motion? Those against? Motion is carried. Third reading of bylaws, bylaw Z5204, 87 Hayes Street, a rezoning. Councillor Price, are you on the line? You take that one.
I'm on the line, Your Worship, but I'm having problems with my e-scry, so I'll pass that to Councillor Peters.
Okay. Well, Councillor Peters, since he passed it to you, you take it.
Thank you, Your Worship. Be it resolved that terms and conditions be adopted.
That be seconded by Councillor McGarity. On the question. All those in favor of the motion? Those against? Motion is carried. Carry on.
Be resolved that bylaw number Z-5.204, a bylaw to amend bylaw number Z-5, a zoning bylaw for the city of Fredericton, be read by summary pursuant to section 15 sub 4 of the Local Governance Act.
Seconded by Councillor McGarity. On the question. All those in favor of the motion? Those against? Motion is carried.
Whereas municipalities may make bylaws pursuant to Local Governance Act, now therefore be enacted by the Council of the City of Fredericton and pursuant to the authority vested in it by Section 10 of the Local Governance Act, SMB 2017, Chapter 18, summarized as follows. The purpose of the proposed bylaw number Z-5.204 is to amend bylaw number Z-5 by rezoning the property located at 87 Hayes Street from mixed-use zone 2, MX2, to commercial corridor zone 1, core 1, for future consolidation with 464 Union Street, and be it resolved that the bylaw number Z-5.204, a bylaw to amend bylaw number Z-5, a zoning bylaw for the city of Fredericton, be given third reading by title.
Seconded by Councillor McGarity. On the question. All those in favor of the motion? Those against? The motion is carried. 7.2, we'll wait for Councillor Price to sign off. Okay. 7.2, that would be Councillor Rogers.
Thank you, Your Worship. Be it resolved that the terms and conditions be adopted.
Okay, and that'd be seconded by Councillor McDermott. And Councillor McDermott.
Thank you, Your Worship. There has been a recommended terms and condition developed by staff, and I would like to add my own term and condition to amend this motion. So what had come from staff is the following terms and conditions recommended under Section 59 of the Community Planning Act. The electronic reader board may be used for third-party advertising at a ratio of 70% commercial partners advertisements and 30% community partners advertisements. So that's one term and condition. I would like to include in that a second term and condition. Applicants to enter into a Section 59 development agreement with the City of Fredericton to restrict third-party advertising to only Fredericton Radio Incorporated to the satisfaction of the development officer. Thanks, Your Worship.
All right, so the process we do there is we would vote on whether we accept that amendment, and then we would vote on the amended terms and conditions. It's a kind of a double vote, but that's the direction I've been given. So is there a seconder for that? Councillor Millet. On the question. All those in favor of the amendment? Those against? Councillor Chase. Motion is carried. So on the adoption of the amended terms and conditions. Moved by Councillor McDermott, seconded by Councillor Chase. On the question.
Sorry,
Councillor Millet.
you already had moved in second. That was Rogers and McDermott had already moved.
Yes, it did. Thank you. Yes, it's stepping backwards. We already had that amended. So the motion was on the floor. We amended it now on the amended motion, which was already moved and seconded. Thank you. All those in favor? Against? Councillor Chase. Motion is carried. Councillor Rogers, carry on with the reading by summary.
Otherwise, I just continue to read as okay?
Yep.
Be it resolved that bylaw number Z-5.205, a bylaw to amend bylaw number Z-5, a zoning bylaw for the city of Fredericton, be read by summary pursuant to section 15.4 of the Local Governance Act.
Seconded by Councillor Chase. On the question. All those in favor of the motion? Those against? Motion is carried. Carry on.
Whereas municipalities may make bylaws pursuant to the Local Governance Act, now therefore be it enacted by the Council of the City of Fredericton and pursuant to the authority vested in it by Section 10 of the Local Governance Act, SNB 2017, Chapter 18, summarized as follows. The purpose of proposed bylaw number Z-5.205 is to amend bylaw number Z-5 under Section 6.34AX in order to permit third-party advertising on a freestanding sign on property located at 715 Priestman Street. And to be it resolved that bylaw number Z-5.205, a bylaw to amend bylaw number Z-5, a zoning bylaw for the city of Fredericton, be given third reading by title.
Seconded by Councillor Chase. On the question. Councillor McDermott.
Thanks, Your Worship. I will not be supporting this motion. I added one of the terms and conditions as sort of I guess a stopgap measure in anticipation that this may very well pass. I'm not sure what the mood of council is. I do have concerns about the third-party advertising. As a municipality, I think our streets and our commercial areas are relatively clutter-free in terms of signage, of billboards. There are other jurisdictions. I lived in Vancouver at a time when it was billboards everywhere. And they were going through a period of pulling those back because it had become a little bit of an urban blight. I am 100% in support of the initiative that that Fredericton Radio Inc. is putting forward in terms of the sign itself. I think it will be an important asset for Centre Communautaire and the organizations that work there. My concern is about the third-party advertising and what it could mean for future applications. We will be setting a precedent where we are tacitly approving third-party advertising. And my concern is that this will be the thin edge of the wedge, and that we will see similar applications to follow. When you think about it, it's a not-for-profit organization that is trying to raise money for its operations. I can think of dozens of other not-for-profit organizations that may actually choose that as another avenue for generating revenue. So on that, Your Worship, I will not be supporting this motion.
Councillor Chase is next.
Thank you, Worship. I'm not going to be supporting this application. And many of the reasons that Councillor McDermott articulated, I think, I mean, it's in no way, I'm in no way opposed to signage, you know, at the location, for the Centre Communautaire and the radio station. My concern is of the proliferation or the potential for proliferation and precedent that this might set for electronic signage, and particularly flashing electronic signage, which is what this proposal embodies. Fredericton has maintained, I think a very pleasant streetscape in the absence of commercial signage, most everywhere, unlike, some other communities, which I'm not going to name. So, with that, I'll just keep it simple. I do not support the flashing electronic signage at this location or any other location in the city. Thank you.
Councillor Rogers.
Thank you, Your Worship. I struggle with this because I entirely support having the sign to promote community events. I think it's an appropriate location for the sign, and I think as a sign announcing to the community what's taking place, that it's more than appropriate. However, I too have concern with the third party advertising. I don't think it's appropriate. It's not in practice with what we do, and it could set a precedent, I think, that we can't even imagine necessarily right now. I know that we would all enter into this with the best of intentions and hope that it wasn't replicated, but then I don't think that we'd be in a very good position to refuse other organizations when they made a similar request with a similar rationale. They're doing it to raise funds, to keep their operations in business. But there are many nonprofit organizations that have to figure out ways to raise funds to keep their operations going, and they don't have the benefit of having a sign, a flashing sign. So I'm nervous about the precedent that it's setting, and for that reason, I can't support it. I think that it could potentially be a slippery slope, one that we don't want to enter into. I don't want our streetscape to be, to be that visually busy. I'm one who believes that it is a safety distraction. I know that there's certainly evidence that points to, if it's for a certain period of time, if the images flash at certain time periods, that it makes it safer than it would be otherwise. But nevertheless, I think that it's a visual clutter and busyness that we don't need, and I can't support it. But I will say, once again, entirely in support of that sign, encourage the organization to proceed with that, to do community announcements, and then to look at alternative fundraising options to make up the revenues that they're hoping to achieve here.
Thank you. Councillor Millet.
Thank you, Your Worship. It was mentioned a few times that the applicant is a community radio station. I can only imagine that running a radio station can be hard enough. Running a non-for-profit, community-based radio station from a minority group for the Francophone communication can be very challenging. I think just to lay a bit of the lane of the radio station Fredericton, being in a minority setting, often we're overlooked by the Radio-Canada and the French CBC on a lot of items. So we're not represented when it comes to radio time on that avenue, and that's where the Fredericton radio station plays a vital role in the Francophone community. There's dozens of groups, non-for-profit, that uses that radio station to promote their message and get their message out there. I think the environment change. I think there's going to be less and less advertising funds out there because of the COVID and the entire situation. So this radio station is in a delicate situation. I think they're thinking outside the box to find more revenue. The loss of that radio station for the Francophone community would be unthinkable. It would really affect the community. I don't think we can really understand around this table. The applicant did work with staff on height and the area variance. It was denial for the third party advertising reasons. I'd just like to point out that there is one of those signs just south, 1 block away. The city, I believe, buys advertising from that sign. It was mentioned a few times around this table that we're in favor of the sign itself without the advertising. Well, we're just asking for that group to take on extra costs without the revenue that comes with it, and that just doesn't make sense on business plan. We also heard that, right, this might set a precedent. It might be a slippery slope. There might be billboards everywhere. I believe we have the bylaw in place to for that not to happen. It's our role around council that when those application comes forward, we rate them on basis and if it's worth going forward with them or not. I believe in this case, what it brings to the community far outweighs the possible disadvantage. So I'll be supporting this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Keenan.
Thanks, Your Worship. Look, I think Councillor Millet just did a great job at bringing forward the perspective of the benefits of approving this. There is certainly the challenge of this third-party advertising and the proliferation of billboards in the city and other electronic billboards, and absolutely that's something we've got to take into context here. However, as Councillor Millet pointed out, it's also the purview of this council to make that determination as to what's appropriate and what isn't on a case-by-case basis. That's our purview. We are able to do that. So if council feels that, that two of them, the one just above, which I think was grandfathered. I don't think that came through any bylaw. I think it grandfathered somehow, but then if we decide that there shouldn't be others, then that's fine. We may decide that there could be others as well. And I think it's different perspectives on what constitutes too much clutter and what has a better community value to it. And I do see specifically for the Francophone community, the community value to this particular initiative. The same as I would see for some other nonprofits or for schools and that sort of thing. I'm thinking from my perspective, I know that there's an actual a business on the north side that wanted to provide some community advertising free of charge on their electronic sign, and it was turned down. And personally, I think that is an opportunity that we should allow in our community so that we can bring community events and get them out to the public so that people understand, they know what's happening in the community. You can post it everywhere, but there's nothing like having a sign somewhere that says this is happening tonight. All kinds of events that are going on. And I think that, council needs to take a little more progressive attitude to this one and say, yeah, maybe it is time that we do allow them in specific places. Again, we get to control that. We take advice from staff and then we get to make a determination. So in this case, there's a community, a Francophone community here that relies on that station. I suspect that much of the advertising will be or could be directed towards that community as well, certainly the community events. And I think that would be a positive thing for the city to help to facilitate in that in some way. So not as concerned about a precedent. A precedent is something that you have to follow all the time. We do not have to follow that. So I'm quite comfortable with the parameters and the fact that the applicant worked diligently with city staff to address the majority of the concerns. The only one outstanding was the third-party advertising. And to Councillor Millet's point, without the third-party advertising, this doesn't happen, so you don't get the community part. So you got to take one with the other. So I'll be voting to support.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor McGarity.
On the front end of this, I've got no problem with that. Maybe it's time to look at that bylaw, and what we should do is, instead of case by case, because right now is looking at the circumstances, is we got to look at the bylaw and look at the terms and conditions of that, the parts of that, and make sure it's fair to other applicants, because we know that maybe we may get one or two more, but we have to have a policy to go by to make it fair. And I'm all about fairness. So as again, look, there's some great things that Councillor Millet put out, and it's you're dealing with culture and people getting their message out. So, but on the same instance, we have to maybe look at that bylaw and if we're going to do this, strengthen it so we can put everybody on the same level. Thank you.
Thank you. So it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of the motion? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Those against? Councillor McDermott, Chase. Okay. Motion is carried. We'll wait to Councillor Price to log back in.
Arguments. Yeah.
Should he wish to? We'll move on to the 8.1, Kennebecasis Regional Police Dispatch Agreement. Deputy Mayor, you take that?
Sure will, Your Worship. Be it resolved that Council of the City of Fredericton hereby authorizes and approves the agreement between the Kennebecasis Regional Joint Board of Police Commissioners and the City of Fredericton with respect to the provision of dispatch services for Kennebecasis Police agreement for a term of 5 years commencing January 1st, 2021 and expiring December 31st, 2026. And be it further resolved, the Mayor and City Clerk are authorized to execute the agreement on behalf of local government and such further legal documents as may be required to facilitate this resolution. I so move.
Be seconded by Councillor Dara. On the question. All those in favor of the motion? Those against? The motion is carried. Yes, sorry, Councillor Keenan, sorry.
I did try to get in on the question.
Oh, I apologize.
Just wanted to, make I guess a comment on that, I think this just reflects the state-of-the-art 911 system that we have in the city of Fredericton and what we built. And, that's being, it's being validated by the fact that this organization wants to utilize our 911 system for their calls. And so I think it just shows that we can provide these services on a centralized basis if that's the wish of some of the communities. And I think we'll probably see more of this coming forward.
Thank you. That well said. We'll move on to 8.2, Performing Arts Center Update. We're going to begin with a presentation from Ken Forrest, our Director of Planning and Development, on what has been listed as our #1 priority project for many years. Mr. Forrest.
Thank you, Your Worship. Pleased to be here this evening to talk to you about a path forward for a new Performing Arts Center for Fredericton. Before I begin, I just want to acknowledge that there's been an awful lot of work around an awful lot of tables over this project over the last number of years. As you mentioned, Your Worship, this council has invested a tremendous amount of time and effort into your #1 priority, which has been very important. There's also been a lot of great collaboration between staff at the Fredericton Playhouse and the city to get to where we are this evening. So pleased to be the person bringing this forward, but certainly want to acknowledge that there is a tremendous amount of work behind what we're going to talk about this evening. So I just thought, given the history of this file, that probably all of you live probably more frequently than you'd like, it'd probably be important for the public to get a sense of some of the history with respect to the Playhouse and the idea for a new Performing Arts Center for Fredericton. So the Playhouse was opened in 1964, a building of that age, certainly, with a lot of the mechanical systems and a lot of the challenges that came with the building from that generation. The city came into ownership of the Playhouse in the year 2000, and shortly after that, actually now about 15 years ago, the first condition study, there was the first condition study that identified that the Playhouse was nearing the end of its service life. So we've known for about 15 years that the existing Playhouse had its challenges from a structural perspective, and it was something that the community was going to need to address. Another condition assessment was conducted for the building back in 2012. And given a more thorough understanding of some of the challenges with respect to the building at that time, the prospect of replacement was identified as something that needed to be considered. If you go through from there, from the history, in 2014, there was a feasibility study that really established the business case for new construction of a performing arts center in comparison to upgrades to the existing building. And that feasibility study at the time provided compelling reasons as to why that was the most prudent path forward for Fredericton Playhouse and for the city. And in fact, the city at that time put its money where its mouth is, so to speak, and made a $14 million commitment towards construction of a new performing arts center for Fredericton. So 6, probably not feeling like so short years ago, that that investment was made, or that commitment was made by the city of Fredericton. Also in 2014 came the council declaration that the new PAC was the city's top new infrastructure priority. Work then shifted to kind of gather allies and collect more information and support for that work. There was a significant economic impact analysis done about the role that performing arts play in the community. That was completed in 2015. A lot of work was done by the Playhouse to bring this project to the Regional Service Commission to try and communicate the regional benefits of a facility of this nature, and that work was done. And then council will recall a lot of discussions about trying to find the appropriate site for a new performing arts center. And in 2018, council made the decision that a new performing arts center should be built on the site of the existing Playhouse. So that's some of the history in terms of where we got, how we got to where we are. Before we get to the recommendation this evening, I want to kind of place it a little bit in your policy context. So the city has, from a policy perspective, been a strong proponent of a new performing arts center for many years, starting with our new municipal plan, where you see there the policy statement that states council's policy that in collaboration with appropriate partners, establishing a new performing arts center in the city, in the city center is a municipal planning goal for this community. More specifically, in the city center plan, lots of policy reference to the role that culture and the arts play in making the city center successful. There's lots of policy support that calls for the construction of a performing arts center in the downtown, and also establishing the need for that construction in the near term. So those policy statements are there. Just to refresh your memory in terms of the policy positions you've taken. As a community, we've also invested a tremendous amount of time and effort into an arts and culture plan, which council's made great strides to achieving since the year it was adopted. And embedded in the arts and culture plan are a series of statements that speak to, again, the importance of the performing arts and the need for investment in that particular infrastructure in the community. So all of that policy support led to a decision by council in 2019 to establish a procurement process to select designers for a new performing arts center for Fredericton. So over the past 16 or thereabout months, there has been a very robust and highly competitive selection process to find the right professional design team to work on a new performing arts center for Fredericton. That was a 3-stage comprehensive process. The first stage sought interest from qualified designers in Canada and throughout North America. And in fact, we were very lucky to receive 20 submissions in the first stage from highly qualified proponents that were interested in delivering a new performing arts center for Fredericton. The challenge that the procurement team then had, and I was one of the co-chairs of that group along with Tim Yerxa, is taking those 20 qualified proponents and shortlisting to three firms that would move on to the second step. And from my perspective as a participant in that process, and I know Councillor Grandy had involvement in that process as well, I think we were very fortunate to have 3 of the most experienced firms in North America make that short list, who had tremendous wealth of experience in designing performing arts centers. And I think important for the community to realize, not just performing arts centers in the large context, but a performing arts center in a community the size of Fredericton. So the trick of trying to design an appropriately scaled regional performing arts center for a community and a region similar in nature to Fredericton. So what we challenged those 3 shortlisted firms to do was, first of all, to produce a design concept for the Performing Arts Center. And I'll be pleased to show you some of the results of that design concept here this evening. So the selected proponent that we'll introduce at the end produced a design concept for the Performing Arts Center, and we'll share some of those results with you this evening. I want to emphasize before we get to the pretty pictures that is a design concept. We were challenging the designers to take our site, take our local context, and challenge them to find some sense of what might be appropriate for Fredericton, but it is not the end of the road on design. If we choose to move forward with a design firm, there would be a collaborative process with public engagement that would lead to a final design for the Performing Arts Center for the community. But this gives us a sense of the possible and gives us a sense of qualifications and skill set. but does not preclude all of the public discussion that would come from a formal design process. We also asked those 3 shortlisted firms to build the multidisciplinary team that's required to work on the project. And I'll introduce some of those players to you in a few slides. And as well, finally, I think the advantage of having 20 well-qualified firms at the beginning brought us to receiving financial proposals that from the perspective of the procurement committee were very financially attractive to the city. There was a significant amount of time and effort by those firms in giving good pricing to the city should we choose to move forward from a design perspective. So we tried to get those 3 pieces included in the work from those 3 shortlisted candidates. So I'm going to move now to the design concept from the preferred firm and the one that's before you this evening for award. I'll move through these reasonably quickly, but this is a design concept of what the Performing Arts Center might look like, essentially from the corner of St. John Street and Queen Street. So looking towards what would be the existing Playhouse or the new entrance to a new Performing Arts Center from that intersection. So it gives you a sense of kind of what might be the appearance of the building from that important intersection. This zooms back a little bit and puts it in the context of the legislature and the lawn in front of the legislature and how that would read, looking at it really from a little bit further away, more from the art gallery perspective, perhaps, to get a sense of how this building would function or could function as a gateway to the city center coming in from the east. Moving along, there are some interior shots. This is a concept of the main performance stage. The next 2 slides give you some sense of lobby, and in particular using windows and glazing to take advantage of that broad lawn across St. John Street and to give a sense of how we can open the Performing Arts Center up to some of our most important architecture in the community, the Legislative Building and the Art Gallery. Just another shot of lobby, and then finally a quick site plan view. In order to provide enough space essentially for the Performing Arts Center on an existing site, which of course has fixed boundaries, one of the things that we'll be looking at going forward in the design concept is moving into the St. John Street right-of-way with a portion of the building and really narrowing St. John Street and moving to a shared street model for St. John Street that would be more familiar to the community in the context of the lower part of Carleton Street. So taking advantage of that extra bit of space to make sure we get a Performing Arts Center that meets our needs, and then also providing the opportunity for a new Performing Arts Center to spill out into public space in a shared street and then toward the legislative lawn to allow for gathering in front of 2 very important public institutions. So keep rolling. On to the next slide. I said there were 3 components. There was a design concept. The next component was a design team. The lead architect that is come out of the procurement process is Diamond Schmidt Architects. So they are the preferred proponent. They prepared that design concept that we went through in the last few slides, and they have a very qualified team of sub-consultants that they've built around them to help them through providing the necessary skill sets in more detailed trades. I do want to highlight that in those sub-consultants, there is a significant amount of both local and Atlantic Canadian content to support the work of Diamond Schmidt Architects, who, if you're not familiar, are a Toronto-based architectural firm. We'll move on to the financial proposal, and this will lead to the recommendation that'll be the final slide. Essentially, the pricing that we've received includes pricing for kind of the early design phases, which are pre and schematic design as well as design development. That represents about a $1.1 million expenditure to get us to the point where we would have basically a design locked and loaded for the Performing Arts Center. If council then chose, we would proceed to construction documents, which would essentially be the very thick roll of plans that would lead to shovels in the ground to detail out all of the specific components of a Performing Arts Center. An amount, should council decide to then proceed with construction, to deal with bidding and tendering of construction contracts, and then the supervision and closeout work that's required to execute the actual construction by the lead designers. So overall, the design process, if we followed this through to essentially turning a key over to
to the Fredericton Playhouse Inc. to operate represents about a $4.2 million expenditure to get us to essentially a doors opening. And that's for design services, obviously not any of the construction components. So just before the recommendation, just a few slides in terms of why it may be an appropriate time for action in the community. As I started with, the need for a new performing arts center is really something that's been in our hearts and minds for a very long time. We identified that need about 16 years ago, and I think we would all acknowledge that over that time, the role of the performing arts and culture in the community has become more and more important to our success as a community. It helps drive our growth. It helps drive quality of life for our residents, and is a very important part of who we are as a community. So, I think the Playhouse is an even more important asset to this community than it was 16 years ago when the challenges in the existing building were first identified. I also want to just connect it back to both the municipal plan and the city center plan. 16 years ago, we were still growing in a fairly suburban way. Frederictonians are increasingly choosing now to live in the urban core. And so investments in the urban core like this are very important to help drive those decisions to live in the downtown core so that people have both the convenience and the lifestyle benefits of being able to live, work, and play in a small area with a more environmentally responsible approach to living, so without reliance on the automobile and things like that. So I think a performing arts center in the downtown is important from a planning perspective. I've noted there that over those years, Fredericton is growing, one of 3 Atlantic Canadian cities that is experiencing tremendous rates of growth. And we have, certainly become one of North America's most successful small cities. And I think not in small part to the fact that this community has a commitment to culture and the arts and quality of life activities, including recreation more generally. There is a lot of confidence in our downtown right now. I might just zip to the next slide there so that council will know this from the data you see, but there's been over $160 million worth of new investment in the south core of our city since 2012. So certainly there is private sector confidence in our urban core, and certainly the existence of cultural assets like this are a very important part of that success and trying to encourage more development in the core. I just want to close with a couple of other observations. I think, if anything, the pandemic has probably reminded us of the importance of community gathering spaces like the Playhouse and like a new performing arts center. And the inability to do that, I think, has touched a lot of us in very different ways. So I think the pandemic reminds us that post-pandemic, and I think there is some early signs of optimism that we may be seeing some light at the end of that tunnel. The opportunity for people to gather together and share cultural experience is something that's very important to this community. So I think the pandemic has shown us probably that's even more important than perhaps we understood before the pandemic started. And finally, I just want to emphasize that I think in terms of why now might be the right timing for this investment, I think we all recognize that in order to get this project going, we need to do what we can to make the project shovel ready. And certainly, I think we acknowledge that post-COVID, there is some likelihood that there will be availability of funding from the senior levels of government to help stimulate economic growth. And having the Performing Arts Center positioned as a shovel-ready project will be important. So the recommendation, Your Worship, that's before council this evening then is extremely long, but essentially would express the will of council to select Diamond Schmidt Architects as the successful respondent to the procurement process that we've gone through since 2019, and further to authorize the expenditure of $1,078,477 plus applicable HST to hire Diamond Schmidt Architects to complete the first 2 components of design work for a new performing arts center. So that would deal with the pre and schematic design of the project as well as the design development. I do want to note that there are some conditions there that have been put forward to put some further context around the recommendation. In particular, there are words around dealing with phasing of the project, recognizing that it will be very difficult, for example, to keep the existing playhouse open while we try and build a new one on the same site. So there is language in the recommendation to deal with phasing. There is also language around making the design of the project flexible to deal with the second stage, to either plug that component of the project in or out, depending on the availability of funding. So we're asking essentially the designer to design in such a way that we'll have a decision point about whether we include second stage at the time of initial construction or whether we would prefer to do that as a later phase. And finally, a condition that would make sure that the city has an appropriate owner's representative engaged, looking after the city's interests in managing the design process. So the way I would explain that is we don't build $40 million cultural assets very often. This is a once in a generation kind of project for Fredericton. And so we think from a staff perspective that acquiring the appropriate expertise to help us through that process to make sure that we get good value from those design experts and we're making appropriate decisions to responsibly manage the overall construction budget for the project, that those are good investments and will lead to a better project for the community. So making sure that we have a good set of eyes and ears on the process going forward. So with that, Your Worship, that is the resolution that's before you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Before we ask for a mover and a seconder, is there any questions to Ken? No, Ken, thanks. That was very detailed and very explanatory. Appreciate that. So we'll put the motion on the floor. That be moved by Councillor Rogers, our council appointee to our cultural committee, and seconded by Councillor Bruce Grandy, who's chair of our development committee, who was also engaged in the initial design committee review, bringing information back to council. And on the question, Councillor Grandy.
Thank you, Your Worship. Appreciate it. Thanks again for such a thorough presentation on this important project. I'm not going to speak too long. I'm just going to talk about the economic benefits to this project, and I'll let Councillor Rogers touch more on the cultural aspect and overall aspect of how the Playhouse fits within this community. But I think it's important that we recognize that, first of all, this is a piece of city's critical infrastructure. It is similar to our roads, our streets, our water, and our sewer programs. And as you can see, in the year 2006, it was already deemed very challenging and needed a lot of upgrades at that particular point in time. And over the years, various councils have put off looking at this and actually putting it on their agenda until more recently our council has adopted this as our first priority going forward. So here we are in 2020, and we need to move forward with this particular project. It is one of the economic drivers of our downtown. When we have the Playhouse in action, it derives so much traffic. You know, our restaurants are full, our hotels get filled up. It helps the vibrancy of downtown. And when we think about the effects of COVID and what it's done to our restaurants and those hotels in the downtown area, we have to think of it in a personal point of view. And where I'm going with that is, if we think about the servers that are at these particular facilities that they're in, and you know, they rely on patrons, they rely on tips, and they rely on the economic vitality of our downtown. And without the Playhouse in action, and without the Playhouse being there, and if it wasn't there, and if we didn't do this renewal, eventually we'd have to shut it down. We would be affecting their livelihood and where they are. So it kind of brings home the fact that the importance of this particular project. I think when we look at the design team, I was fortunate to sit on the committee as we went through this process as your representative. I'm looking at council here. And it was a very, very arduous and engaging process and work to come up with this particular design team. I think you can appreciate the diversity of companies. There are some local and Atlantic companies, as Ken has put forward, that are there. And there's a lot of benefits to that. When we look at what's happening in our city, you know, the population growth that we are experiencing now, and it's progressive and more progressive than we anticipated. We're starting to densify the downtown, and that's what we wanted. In our Imagine Fredericton plan, it's all about people wanting to live in the downtown and living in the city. And when we do that and densify the downtown, then there has to be more opportunities for them. So, and when we look at the Centennial Building proposal that'll be coming forth to council soon, and the mixture that's there, it's just going to populate even more. So, when you look at the entertainment aspect, again, it is an important thing. I think the design itself, or the company, Diamond Schmidt, will, some of the specific things we've given them to do is balance the fiscal realities that we're in with the size of the building that we need to do. And Ken talked about phasing. It's important that we understand that it will be a phased approach if we want to go that way, or we can construct it all at once. But the idea about this is, and we could have done this in two distinct lines, as we move forward here in the two sums that you see in the motion. But the idea here is we move forward through the pandemic, and as we move forward through economic recovery that eventually will happen, we need to ensure this project is ready to be constructed. We need to make sure that it's as close to shovel ready as possible as we move forward, so that we can step up to the plate and we can engage the two levels of government for their participation in this. And I think based on where we're going in the decision tonight, if it passes council, will be a clear indication to governments that we are proceeding, that we will be talking to them, and that we will look for opportunities to work together on this important project. So I think from that, your worship, I think I'll pass the baton over to Councillor Rogers at this point. Thank you.
Councillor Rogers, if you wish to speak.
Thank you, Worship. I don't know if it's my turn or someone else was.
You go ahead.
Was ahead of time. Okay, thank you. Well, I guess I'll start with, I loved it when Ken said now is the time. And I think that that is a very good way to put it. It's been, I guess, 16 years in the making. I certainly know that I've been involved probably since 2013. On council has been involved since 2012, but I think the Arts and Cultural Advisory Committee was very involved when the consultant came to do the feasibility study in 2014. And so it has been a long time in the making. But what the positive that has come out of that is that we have very much done our due diligence. And when we look at the level of detail that's before us, I think that we can all feel comfortable in knowing we have done that due diligence. We've done it with our partners. We've done it with the community. I think back to that 2014 feasibility study, the meeting that we had with the community, and when the needs assessment was conducted, and what that revealed and what that showed to us, what our community now needs in a performing arts center. The center that we operate out of now is a 1960s build that was reflective of that reality. It was built essentially to put on theater performances, and now you look at that space, and over 50% of the nights of the year there is a live performance of one sort or the other taking place in there. And some is theater, there's dance, there's music, there's local groups, there's international groups, there's all of this takes place, and we're trying to replace that building. And maybe the time is right. Maybe we had to take this time to make sure that we got it right. But I think that we can feel confident, especially when we look at the quality of the submissions for the project. I think we can feel confident in that the time is right to move forward with this project. Certainly the timing is right from an asset replacement perspective. That building, it's really a miracle it's lasted as long as it has, given the condition that it's in. And I know that a lot of work has been kept in maintaining it. I know that building has a very special place in everyone's heart, but we're going to build another building that has a special place in people's heart and that allows the community to attend and to participate in live performances. I look at this motion, and the only part of it that makes me nervous, and I feel I have to express it, is the phasing component. And because what we heard from the people of Fredericton, but also when we did a reconnaissance mission throughout Ontario and looked at different stages there, is the importance of that second stage. The large stage, which allows for an audience of, I think, close to 800 people, those kinds of shows don't come through Atlantic Canada all the time. So yeah, that large stage will be used and it's very important, but the stage, the sweet spot of that Performing Arts Center is the smaller stage, because that's where a lot of your local performances are going to occur. That's where a lot of the touring performances that take place in the city, that's where they're going to occur. So I think that what we heard resoundingly in 2014 when we did that feasibility study was people saying, we want that space to be a space where community can also perform, where community can go and see excellence and then have an opportunity to aspire to that excellence. So while I understand the need of phasing this project, and I understand that there might be, that the concern is financial and that maybe we won't be able to afford to build the second stage at the same time, I would say for the additional money it will take to build that second stage, we will more than make it back in revenues and ticket sales. So as we move forward with this, I hope that we encourage our partners who are bound to come on side when they see what a fantastic project this is. I hope that they appreciate the importance of that second stage for our community. This is the dollar value I know is maybe shocking to some, but you know what? We spend this kind of money when we design things all the time, and especially when we design to the level of detail that a performing arts center needs to be developed to and designed to. This is the cost of doing business, and it will pay itself back in the quality that we receive. I'm very confident. I'm also, the fact that the Playhouse Board of Directors and staff has been so engaged in this also gives me confidence. The expertise that we have at that organization is paramount, really. It is. I think that they're envied. They're the envy of really a lot of theaters from across the country, and we're lucky to have them as a partner in this. And moving forward, we're lucky to have them as a partner. They see themselves as a center of economic vitality. And, you know, I look at how, when you look at community partnership, I look at how the Playhouse has partnered with us through COVID. They opened their doors as soon as they could. There are a lot of cultural venues who've stayed shut, not the Fredericton Playhouse. The Fredericton Playhouse said, we are central to this community. We know how important that we are to feed the restaurant business and to feed the entertainment business. They kept their doors open, they put their measuring tape out, and they got as many people sitting in those seats as they can. And they can now put almost 250 people in those seats, and they're open for business. And I think that gives me confidence in moving forward with this project, because I know that once we get moving on this, once we get this design, our provincial, federal partners are going to buy in, private development community is going to buy in, and the community, the local community is going to buy in and all support this. And then we are going to have, you know, the cultural icon that our city deserves. And so it's with pleasure that I moved this resolution, and I'm sure everyone can feel my excitement for the fact that it looks like we might be hitting go on this, and I can't wait. So thank you especially to the staff for all of your hard work. It has been endless, and it's very much appreciated.
Thank you. Councillor Millet.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll try not to repeat some of the stuff that were brought up by the two colleagues. When I'll be honest, I probably don't go to the Playhouse as often as I should. I find myself in an arena on a Saturday morning because that's what puts a smile on Sam's face. But I also know there's hundreds of kids that what puts a smile on their face is performing on that stage. And I also know there's thousands of people in Fredericton and the surrounding communities that do use that stage, that infrastructure yearly. Councillor Grandy mentioned it, that this is our asset. I guarantee if there was 2 reports talking that one of our arena was coming to end of life, we'd be planning for it, and that's what we're doing here. I think it's important that we do plan to renew the city-owned infrastructure, and I'm really excited at the possibility that it's going to bring that cultural hub with that building, the Beaverbrook Gallery right across the street. I think that area could really create something special for the downtown, for the city. And I'd just like to point out, I'm sure we'll talk about 9.1, that where the funding comes from. And we're working on our budget, our capital budget, operational budget. This is not coming from that fund. This will be board money. I think because the city was fiscally responsible and we're well below the 20% debt ratio that's allowed by the province. We're well below the 8% debt ratio that we have as a policy at the city. I think it's important that the people understand where that money's coming from. I think it's important for the media to make that clear, that it's not the same budget as we've been discussing over the last couple of weeks. We have room to do this project. I think this is an important project for the community, and I'm looking forward to moving this forward.
Thank you. Be no more comments. Councilor McGarity.
I struggle on this one. I really, really, really do. I get the arts and I go there as much as I can. But I'm looking at this situation that every municipality around the world's in, and it's going to get down to money and funding, and somebody's got to pay for this somewhere along the line. This is a big, big endeavor, a big endeavor. And I look at it as I wouldn't mind if going forward, and if this does go through, that the Playhouse has to open up more to community for people that can't afford to spend that type of money. So, going forward, it has to be more inclusive, and I haven't seen that yet. And hopefully that message gets to them, that they have to be more inclusive to people that can't afford those tickets. Kids that can't go there and perform on that stage at least have a chance. Look, we're looking at a regional center. We're going to be in the middle of municipal reform right now, and municipalities, as we now know it, could be totally changed. But one aspect of a regional of municipal reform was regionalization of these facilities. And I'm just wondering if we have gone out and asked the communities, because this has to come to the community, all the communities that surround us, they have to participate in the provincial government. Are we going to get money from the communities? Probably not. Most of these smaller communities are just trying to make budgets themselves. But when we ask province and the feds for money, if we come back with a multiple voices on support, then they pay attention more. So that's the only way that's going to happen. And there's a $3 million private component of donors. So I haven't heard anything of that. So we're going to put in over $1 million here. These things become more important. So, it's about inclusion, and, if I beat that drum, I'm going to continue to beat it. So, I want to hear more from the board is how are they going to include more people? Because what I get is a lot of people have talked to me and said, I don't even go there anymore. I can't afford to go there. So it's an affordable thing. On the other side of it, to sustain our city, to be the city we want to be, this is an important piece of infrastructure. So this is tearing me apart. It's a big decision. It's over $1 million. So I'll leave it at that, and we'll go to vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I have some concerns, and they're strictly financial. There's no question the value of the Playhouse plays in the city, and there's no question that we need to build a new Playhouse. I don't disagree with that. But I am concerned that, we started down this road 6 years ago. We told the public we're going to spend $14 million and be three-way partners essentially on a project. Those 6 years we've heard nothing but crickets. I haven't heard anything about potential support. And now you tie in COVID with that. There's going to be significant pressures on the provincial and federal government. I just don't see how this is going to climb up to be a priority. Today, we're looking at spending $1.24 million to get this started, the first step towards spending $4 million on what would be a $45, $50 million project. Now, what I think we need to do is have an honest conversation about what are we willing to spend to do this project, because we do need to build a performing arts, and I agree with that. But we've told the public we're spending $14 million. Is it $50 million? Maybe. I probably wouldn't support that myself, but is it 30, 35 million? I think we need to really have a deep look at what we're willing to do for this. because there's a lot of people out there suffering, and I can't see this being real high on the priority list. But it is for us, and we need to get it done somehow. I just don't like the way we're going about it and the way things have played out so far. Because we need to provide these opportunities. There's hundreds of kids in the city and adults that need this. My kids are very artistic. They love the Playhouse. But I think we need to have a real serious conversation. So, I mean, I can't support the way it's going. But with that said, I mean, I hope I'm absolutely wrong. I hope the funders come on board, and I hope everyone's optimism plays out, because that certainly makes it a lot easier on the residents of Fredericton to get this done. So I'll leave it at that, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Dara.
Thank you, Worship. Councillor Chase, were you ahead of me? Just
I think the hands went up at the same time.
okay.
So
All right. Thank you. It's funny, this came up, and we're half a year past our term. I remember being the day after the election, myself, Councillor Peters, Councillor Mullane, we got hauled into Terry's live show. And the very last question he asked was support of the Playhouse. And I said, hands down, I support the Playhouse, right? And I still to this day support building a new PAC. Nothing's changed in my mind. I understand the financial constraints that we have. But we have built arenas for the athletic community. We've built two. Willie O'Ree, I think it was 35 million, and Grand Harvey at 50. I mean, I could be wrong in my numbers, but double? Oh, thanks for the. Oh, I doubled it.
you doubled it, yes. Yeah.
Still, the point still stands, right? We built two arenas that total more than or the same as 50 million. So it's time to invest in the arts community. They've been neglected too long. As Councilor Millett pointed out earlier, we invest in our own infrastructure. We invest in pipes and water, sewer systems. We invest in roadways. We invest in parks. And it's time to invest in the arts community. And what was the line you used, Ken? The time is now? I'm a big supporter of the arts community. I love live music. My involvement with Harvest Jazz and Blues Festival, I mean, everybody knows. I first got involved in the arts community when I met Jim Miles in high school, and I had a great time with music production, and I enjoy it. I still enjoy it. One of the greatest things to watch is a Broadway show, and the Playhouse brings Broadway shows to Fredericton. So it's really nice to see. They're really exciting. To clear a comment up about inclusion, Councillor McGarity, they do have a pay-as-you-go program where people can go and pay what they need to pay or what they can afford to pay so they can go and see a show. And there's more than one a year. And that's an initiative that was brought forward by the board, I believe. And it was an idea that came from, I think, please correct me, Tim Yerxa came up with the idea. So I want everybody to be aware that that program does exist. And as far as the communities go, I can't remember what the offer was, but did not one of our, did Ormocto not offer $100,000 right away? So there is commitment from the outside communities, and the others need to follow. It's time that the government of Brunswick invests in its capital city. It's time that the federal government invests in the arts community in Fredericton. So I'll be supporting this. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Chase.
Thank you, Your Worship. The enthusiasm in the room tonight is, the enthusiasm in the room tonight really is quite palpable. And I thank Ken Forrest and the design committee and staff that have worked so hard in putting together a very thorough presentation. For my part, I have been concerned about the development of a performing arts center, for a long time, as the number one priority, for the city of Fredericton. The funding that we're talking about is, very significant, 42 million, and I think probably it will go beyond that. And, the investment that the city's prepared to make in this, being roughly 1/3, is a significant contribution, a significant factor. But, I think we have to dream and dream big, really. And that's why, in this presentations tonight, I've actually changed my point of view to be more supportive of us getting on with the development of the Performing Arts Center. Spending $1 million or $1.2 million to get a design going, to have something to bring to the table, is a very reasonable investment. So I'll be supporting the motion. And it's on the basis that, this is a need. It is an investment in the community. The Performing Arts Center is integral to the community, and it's integral to the region. And, other speakers have spoken of the importance of getting our regional partners on board. Perhaps moving to the design phase and having something to put on the table will encourage, more of our regional municipal players to come to the table. But in particular, I'm calling on the federal and provincial government to help the city of Fredericton and the Fredericton region realize this need for the community and this investment, which will not only support the needs and aspirations of the residents of our region, but it would also attract newcomers to the community and new business. And it's a very easy business case, to make around the development of this performing arts facility. So tonight I have become a convert, a full convert, and so I'll be supporting the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Keenan.
Yeah, I'll be pretty brief. Thanks, Your Worship, because great points have been made, and I think if outside of Fredericton, if you were to say what defines Fredericton, they would say it's a culture and arts city. And, so this will be one of the centerpieces of our cultural and art community. And, it's going to add to that part of the downtown. To Councillor Chase's point, and I certainly do understand the concern over the finances. This is a bold step that we're taking. But I know a friend of mine told me one time it's really tough to sell air. And what he meant is if you have nothing to look at, it's hard to get people to consider to participate in something if you don't have something to show them. And that's what we're going to achieve here. Took me a long time to get over to the convert side because it's not like this is coming here tonight and maybe people are just hearing about it and wondering, geez, where'd that come from? Trust me, we've talked about this for a long time. As Kate has said more than once, we've talked this thing to death. And I think we finally come to the realization it's time to move forward. So I'm certainly happy to support it. I know the Playhouse committee, the PAC committee, has been working with our neighboring communities to gather support, and I know that they have supported the concept of this development. So we will need to ensure that they're on side when we go with our request to other levels of government. We'd like to see them fund also through their tax base, but certainly we are looking for that support as a region for the funding, because that will be the key to us getting the ear of the province together as a region. If we can act as a region, we get a lot more clout in the provincial cabinet than if we try to act alone as a city. So I think that's really key, and I think the PAC group has done a great job at building those bridges already. So looking forward to that, and I do commend the Playhouse for their outreach to disadvantaged communities. I know Councillor Dara mentioned the pay what you will, and there's also, they have student pricing where if there are tickets available, they give deep discount pricing to students. They bring school children in for performances and workshops, and they do a lot of outreach to the community. So I really think we are hitting that, and they're to be commended for that. I think they are reaching out to the community, and they'll continue to do so. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Price.
Thank you, Your Worship. Look, I want a performing arts center the same as everyone else around the table does. I agree with all of Ken's points in the presentation, and I agree with all of Kate's points and all of the other points that have been made tonight about how bad we need this, how bad our downtown needs it, and it is good to dream. I do lean towards Councillor Hicks. I'm not really comfortable with the way this is going down to spend all of this money, taxpayers' dollars, $1.1 million, for a set of plans that and elevations that for a building that we don't have any money to build. That's really, really, really bothering me, and this is a really, really hard decision to make. I am going to join the list of converts tonight, but I'm really, really concerned about spending $1 million in taxpayers' money for these plans that we might not even use. So I just pray that things go well and our dreams are fulfilled with our funding partners. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Anybody else? No. Well, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of the motion? Those against? Deputy Mayor, the motion is carried. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is a first step forward in a process that's got several steps to go, but one that we've been on a path for almost 16 years. So people that have a concern that this was a rushed or not well thought out process, please take comfort in the fact that this has been discussed many times by many people, by many councils, and many times we were ready to move forward and we stopped and said, look at it again. And we looked at it again and found that the need was still there, and we found maybe some better ways to do it. Then we were ready to move forward, and then we stopped again. Let's look at it again. And every sober second thought just solidified the fact that this is an absolute necessity in our city, not only from an infrastructure point of view, it's something that the taxpayers own, and we look after things for the taxpayers. We do that on roads and streets and water and sewer and parks and vehicles. And from a cold-hearted perspective, that's what this is. But I think you've heard tonight what it means on a bigger scale. Think of the cultural precinct we're going to have there. The millions, the tens of millions of dollars that the private sector has put into the art gallery for the series of expansions to make that one of the most iconic art galleries in Canada. The beautiful legislative building, the convention center that we have beside it. You can stretch it out to the Charlotte Street Art Center if you want, and look at the life that's been brought over there over the last decade. The private sector investment that's going to go into the Centennial Building that was talked about tonight, and that's working its way through PAC. We'll see where it goes. But that end of the community is going to be just a cultural magnet. And the people of New Brunswick, the people of Fredericton, the people of New Brunswick, and the politicians in New Brunswick should want their capital city to shine. Absolutely shine. Most capital cities in a country, the province takes deep pride in it. We do, and I know our politicians do too, but we have to have something to show them. And this will be the step along that line. And there's children in this community that aspire to, as has been talked tonight, to be on that stage. Think of how proud every one of us are if you ever have the opportunity to go see your children or your relatives performing in a Christmas concert at the school, or see the Sistema program where the children are learning music. And those children may not be athletes. And we're very good at that here, and we're proud of that. That's part of our heritage too. But those children should be able to aspire to the same type of facility and support network that our athletes do. Think of Misha, the next Misha Brugger-Garsman's out there, the next David Miles, the next Norm Foster, playwright. We got Tony Lepage, who's making a name for himself on Broadway right now, who cut his teeth on that stage. And if they think it's all elite performances, think of the Bonnie Kilburn dancers. Think of the country showcase. Think of the multicultural events that go on there, where newcomers to our community be able to share their pride in their home country, but in their new city with everybody in the Fredericton region. So this is a big step for us. And we hear the people that are concerned about the finances clearly, absolutely. That's why it's taken us 16 years to get to this point. But 30 years of fiscal stewardship by this council, by successive councils, staff, and the people of the Fredericton holding us accountable has allowed us to be in a position to be able to put forward the funding to be able to contribute our third. The same as people have concern about other facilities that we're talking about. We have the capacity to take on a couple of big projects when the time is right. And the time is right for this one. So ladies and gentlemen, I think the council, good work, staff, tremendous work, and the community. We're going to do something proud here for you. You're going to be proud of this facility when it's done. We do need our partners. Yes, this is a step to be able to show them. It's quite, I think Councillor Keenan said, you can't sell air. And but this is not a reckless move by any stretch. And when the community gets more engaged as this moves along, I think I know they'll be as excited as we are to see this come to fruition. So a big step for us. And now we'll move on to the next item, which helps this one go forward. Item 9.1, Municipal Capital Borrowing Board application for authorization of financing for the Performing Arts Center. Councillor Erickson.
Thank you, Worship. The resolution is as follows. Be it resolved that the Council of the City of Fredericton authorizes an application to the Municipal Capital Borrowing Board for authorization to borrow money in the amount not to exceed $1,400,000 for a term not to exceed 20 years for the purposes of a performing arts center. This application is made pursuant to Section 1.1 of the Municipal Capital Borrowing Board Act.
Point of order. Yes. The resolution in the previous, in 8.2 was not read. We moved and seconded it, but no one read it. I'm looking at the city clerk. Does it have to be read?
No, everybody has to know what the resolution was. We had it on the screen, just so we didn't have to read it.
It was articulated by Ken Forrest, but not word for word.
Yeah. I'm double checking just for clarification on governance. That's my big thing is.
It's understood. The importance and what case law has said is that it's the intention, that we know what the intention of the motion is. And since the motion was actually on writing on the screen at the time, everybody is well aware of the intention of it was.
You're the expert. Thank you.
And to that point, we'll make sure that the resolution is available for anybody that wants to see it. Of course.
My apologies, Councillor Erickson.
Councillor Erickson, carry on. If you can remember where you stopped.
I can, Your Worship, and no apologies required. Councillor Grandy, any questions of procedures always have precedence here. And I was scrutinizing with my fancy reading spectacles the resolution when we were all we were having a conversation about it, so it's all fine. Coming back to the resolution at hand, and be it further resolved that the city clerk be authorized to execute Form 1- application for authorization under the Municipal Capital Borrowing Act on behalf of the municipality and such further documents that may be required to facilitate this resolution. I so move, Your Worship.
Seconded by Councillor Keenan. On the question, Councillor Keenan.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. I'm considering voting against this to see if I can get enough support to vote against it, just to see what the finance chair will do at that point if we approve actually getting the work done without giving them the approval for the money.
It's going to come out of your allowance, Councillor.
Okay, maybe I'll vote for it then. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor McGarity.
So this is going to be borrowed money. It's nothing that we're taking out of our accounts that we have. So I guess the balance of a year to year for the next 20 years would be operating costs. So what's the monthly, do we have a monthly cost? Do we have any idea what monthly it's like loan at a bank, basically.
We have Alicia Keating on the line, and she can explain the process. Alicia?
Thank you, Your Worship. Essentially, what we're looking at, depending on interest rates and debenture funding that we do get through the provincial government, the annual bill is going to be approximately $100,000 per year, depending on final amounts. So the way it works through the Municipal Capital Borrowing Board is there's essentially two payments that happen, and one interest payment and one interest in principal payment each and every year on the debentures that are issued.
That's good, and interest rates are historically low, so probably a very good time to do something like this. And I guess if we push it off 4 or 5 years, never know where interest rates could be. So just wanted to know what the yearly cost would be. Thank you.
Thank you. All those in favor of the motion? Those against? The motion is carried. I just lost my agenda for a second. That is the end of the agenda. There's everybody's present tonight, so motion to adjourn. That would be Peters and Price. All those in favor of the motion? Against?